Welcome to Journey to Joy Live, a podcast to promote wellness, resilience, and inspire joy. Be empowered to balance your mental, physical, financial, aspirational, and social health while providing mental health awareness and breaking down the stigma of mental illness in the Black community. I'm your host, Dr. If Joy, and I'm here to help you transform life's challenges into opportunities for joy. Let's begin the journey together. Hey, y'all. We here again on a Wednesday for episode 104. Joy is my type with Dr. Pamela Larde, who is our joy researcher. I had to bring you back because you were here for the 100th episode and traffic was against you for sure.
There was a lot going on that day.
Had about 5 to 10 minutes. I said, nah, we didn't get enough of this joy research and got to hear more about your book and everything. So your book is Joyfully Single. So welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And for those who didn't see you on the episode 100, you want to introduce yourself and tell us more about you?
Yes. So I am first and foremost a writer at heart. That's in terms of professionally. I'm always been a writer. And so this is just the joy work is an excuse for me to write something. But I've done spoken word writing, creative writing, and research writing. So that's a big part of what I do and is sort of at the root of all the other things. So I'm a college professor of leadership at Anderson University. And I teach doctoral students right now. The class I'm teaching is called Trauma-Informed Leadership, which is actually sort of feeding one of my next books on leadership, and it's joy and leadership, but it's really kind of looking from the lens of joy-informed leadership because we always talk about trauma-informed, but what is joy like? So that's. And I'm also a director of education at Harvard's Institute of Coaching. That is a collaboration between Harvard Medical School and McLean Hospital. And so it's a global sort of collective of people who are interested in the research and the science behind coaching and apply that to well-being practices in coaching. I am the founder and owner of the Academy of Creative Coaching. That's the first owned, fully accredited coaching school in the world. And we established that in 2013. So 12 years old now. So I think those are the big things. And the most important personal thing is that I'm a mom of two, and I'm about to be an empty nester. My daughter is graduating. She's graduated and is heading off to college in a month and a half.
Oh my goodness. Crazy.
So that's me in a nutshell.
That is awesome. Well, that's a big nutshell. And you said those are just the big things. So I can't really do the small things. I know you got your football next tomorrow.
That's right. I am a professional football player. I'm with the Atlanta Truth, and this is part of the WNFC, the Women's National Football Conference. So this is the largest football sort of entity for women in the United States, pro team. So yeah, that's another thing that I do.
That is so cool. Yeah. So what is your PhD in? What was your research in for that?
Leadership. So my is actually leadership, and then the full title, which I love, and it's one of the reasons why I was drawn to this program, but it's leadership for the advancement of learning and service. So you really get to apply that leadership, I think, to really meaningful, life-changing, world-changing initiatives. So.
Oh, nice. That is so dope. And trauma-informed leadership, because you hear about trauma-informed care all the time with patients, but leading a team, managing people, you definitely have to be trauma-informed with that as well.
Oh my gosh.
As we have
leader. Too many leaders bleeding all over their people because they've been traumatized and they don't even know what it looks like. So
and that's how work-related stress comes in, or toxic work environment, all those things, when you're just not like understanding what other people's backgrounds have been, or that they may have been, there's some trauma that's intermingled in what's going on with their work performance. So,
right. Especially if you don't get your own. I mean, that's probably even a bigger problem. So
exactly. All right. So how did that turn into joy research?
Well, the joy research was rooted in my, I'll say that I started in my doctoral program. My research then focused on self-determination and how people people accomplish their goals, specifically looking at how first generation college students, so those who were first in their families to go to college, how did they pursue college? What was the thing that made them say, I'm going to go? And how did they overcome whatever barriers or challenges that got in their way to get there? So I learned about those experiences and how people remain determined enough to accomplish what they're seeking to accomplish. And I then moved to looking at, because I was challenged by one of the people in an audience I was speaking to, and they said, okay, but these students all had pretty decent lives. You know, they weren't traumatized. What about like students like mine who live in the Bronx and they're dealing with serious traumatic experiences while they're going to college? So I then turned to starting to look at trauma, and that's where the trauma began. And then I moved to looking at military families and how they their family members reintegrate after returning from combat. And then the final group I looked at before transitioning to Joy was divorcees and people who had experienced heartbreak, learning about how they overcome heartbreak and what they go through in that process. So people started asking me, what are the commonalities between college students, traumatized students, military folks, and divorcees? Thread. So I actually spent a year thinking, you know, kind of digging and looking at the intersection between those four categories. And I think by December 2019, I landed on Joy. And the idea was that, like all four of those populations were essentially seeking joy. And, you know, after combat, and even when they weren't able to fully articulate it, the way that they described, when I went back and looked at transcripts and the interviews, the way that they described their desires and what they were fighting for, like post-divorce or trying to get through college, it was all surrounded by this idea that I envision a joy that I haven't had and I'm going to try to get it, or I am remembering a joy I used to have and I want it back. So that's how I landed on Joy. And the funny thing is, it was December 2019. And guess what happened 3 months before? So I got to really start looking at joy from the lens of crisis and hopelessness. And, you know, now we're stuck and we're all indoors and we don't know if we're going to survive. And so I really had an opportunity to look at how people were practicing fighting for or giving up on joy during that time period.
That is really cool. And so in that research, how did you define joy? Because I spent a lot of time over these past 104 episodes defining joy. How was it defined in your research?
Well, so the American Psychological Association defines it as an exhilaration of the spirit. And that's part of the definition. That's the part that I grabbed onto, the exhilaration of the spirit, because it speaks to energy and the way that joy energizes us. And that energy can help us push through some of the most difficult times and create a level of resilience in us.
There it is.
So that is part of how I define it. But I also add to that, that it exists whether we are in good times or bad times. So it doesn't matter necessarily, you know, happiness is more associated with, you know, our external environments, what we're experiencing, if we feel safe. Joy doesn't always come just because we feel safe.
Correct.
We can be in some of the most dangerous, scary situations and struggle with that. So
it's a constant.
So it's a combination of an exhilaration of the spirit, which arises from within. It is also something that is rooted in well-being. So that's another part of the definition. And the third part of the definition is that it exists through the positive or negative experiences that we have.
Exactly. Positive or negative experience. So it's like a constant no matter what you're experiencing. And then rooted in wellness. Does that mean you have to be well in order to envision it? Because you said some people can envision something maybe that they haven't experienced, but the other people are envisioning a place of joy that they once had.
Yeah, that's a very important question. And I use the term well-being intentionally because well-being speaks to our being, who we are from the inside out. And so the idea is that well-being is intentional. So we are working towards well-being. We might be in a place where we're languishing and we are struggling, but is there any intentionality around well-being and getting better and healing? If we're stagnant and we're not doing that work, it is very difficult to experience joy or to be intentional about joy.
Exactly. You hear that, folks? This is Dr. Larde, PhD joy researcher, actually validating everything that I've been saying on this podcast.
Love
You
it.
can choose joy despite trauma, despite
Yes.
all the challenges that you have. And it can exist even in the face of whether things are good or bad. I love it. So what more have you found in your research? Like any types of statistics or numbers that people can take away from your research?
Yeah, so I'm not a statistical numbers researcher. I'm qualitative.
Me
So
neither. Oh,
for
God.
us,
I like qualitative research myself.
yeah, so for those of you who aren't clear on qualitative, it is just I learn the stories and the experiences and the perspectives of people, and I dive into the meaning of concepts, and so I drill into what the words mean. What does joy look like in Swahili? What does it look like in Indian cultures, and so just different contextual perspectives on joy. And so, but one of the things that came out of my research that I think is really important and is this idea of, it goes back to well-being. And I've designed a model that's it's a sub-model, because there's a big model called the multidimensional framework of joy. But within that, there is a model that looks at well-being, and it is what I call the ethics of joy. And how does joy intersect with ethics? Ethics is essentially how we make decisions about what we believe is good and bad, moral, what's our values. And so the ethics of joy is that the extent to which our well-being is in a good place, that is how we pursue our joy. So if we are languishing in our well-being, it's not going well, and we are not doing the work, and we are not intentional about improving well-being, our joy pursuits are going to be more on the toxic side. They are going to don't necessarily nurture our well-being or nurture the well-being of others. So that's what I call drawing from the languishing well. So there's two wells. There's a flourishing well and there's a languishing well. So when we are drawing from the languishing well, we are basically sort of wallowing in our languishing and finding ways to just kind of find some quick fixes, comfort.
Yeah.
We might drink a lot because it feels good in the moment. And think that this is a pursuit of joy. It's perceived joy, but it's not actual joy.
Or instant joy or instant gratification.
Right. And so if we are drawing from that languishing well, we might do things. We're in a struggling relationship or a struggling marriage. So we might go find satisfaction with somebody else because it's in the moment. It's doing, but it's in the long term, it's not helping our well-being, nor is it helping the well-being of others. The other thing that drawing from the languishing well does is what is called Schadenfreude. This is a German term that means joy in other people's pain. So finding joy in other people's pain. And that is something that we do when we're drawing from the languishing well, when we are, so when we think about, and you don't have to name nobody, a leader or some leaders that find joy in other people's pain. And I bet you, if
I can't think of anyone.
Right? But if I had an opportunity to sit down with them and learn about what's going on inside and their childhoods and their insecurities, and we don't even have to go back to childhood. We can look at today, what's going on inside. I will bet you that they are not flourishing if they are finding joy in other people's pain.
Correct.
So the flourishing well is the pursuit of authentic joy, not perceived joy, not Schadenfreude, not toxic joy, but authentic joy. And so we are doing things that nurture our well-being. We're proactive about, running 10 miles a day, or, yes, we are doing what serves our bodies and our souls to grow and to improve. And so that's one of the biggest, I think, things that I found around joy is that we always think it's, if we say joy, it's all happy,
automatic.
Right. But no, there are dark sides to joy, which I call perceived joy. It's, we think that's what it is. And the reason why I still label or add the word joy to it is because there is an energy that is driven, that drives it. It's not a positive energy. It's not a good energy, but it's the kind of energy that makes people feel like, I'm getting something out of this, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep doing this.
With the perceived joy.
Perceived joy. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's almost like when you are pursuing joy in the state of crisis or challenges or trauma, it's almost like there's this also this need for patience, obviously, because it's going to take some time before you actually feel it. But being intentional about choosing it is the first step, making that decision. I'm going to choose joy despite, and it's going to take some time to actually get there. Because like when you're talking about that instant, it made me think about instant gratification and how people choose alcohol. And it's like, in the long run, that's going to cause depression, but maybe instantly it makes you escape and feel like joy in the moment, but it really isn't. But as far as doing the work and being intentional and consistent, it takes time. There's definitely a level of patience and gratitude and resilience and a lot of other traits.
Right. I mean, there's, and there are ways, of course, and this probably goes without saying, of enjoying alcohol without it becoming a toxic thing. But I had a friend who, she would tell me every day after work, she would have a bottle of wine, not a glass of wine, a bottle of wine.
Yep.
Drowning her sorrows, and in ways that would just kind of help her. And
a lot of people do that. A lot of women, a lot of Black women, a lot of high achieving Black women, they do it. They don't realize, whoa, wait a minute. Now I'm at 2 bottles. Now I'm at 3. It's real easy to go through a bottle. So it's hard to recognize those signs sometimes when you just feel like, well, I'm experiencing the joy, or maybe I can't get to the joy, but the numbness that it brings to me is better than the hurt if I were to do the work or not drink.
Right. Well, and it's also, if it's consistent. I mean, like I said, she said it was every day.
Yeah.
And so, we all hopefully know what, what our limits are. And if we are doing too much, if we are really being honest with ourselves.
You got to be honest with yourself. That's the thing. Yeah.
You're really being honest with yourself, So that's one of the, I think, most important things. And the other thing is, it's easy for us to say, well, those people who draw from the languishing well and who, engage in Schadenfreude, they find joy in other people's pain. My word for that, and I should use my word for it because I'm not German, it's malicious joy. And so it's
right. Yeah, for sure. Joy in other people's pain. Oh, yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. So I don't want us to get too high and mighty and think we don't do this ever. I'm not going to lie. When there was a certain... I'm trying
to think, do I do it? I guess if they deserve it, like karma.
That's the thing. So we think that, we're on the judgment, pedestal. But look, there was a certain president that was in office during COVID who at one point...
Sorry, go ahead.
Who at one point himself was diagnosed with COVID. And look, the way that I screamed and danced around that kitchen when that announcement came out... Because I was like, finally, he gets to see what it's like. And then lo and behold, he didn't really get to see what it's like. But that was Schadenfreude. That was joy in somebody else's pain. That was me celebrating somebody else's downfall. Now,
exactly true. When you put it that way, okay, fine.
But here's the thing. It doesn't make us evil if we do it. What it does, the reason why I want people to recognize that this can so easily happen is because if you allow this to become who you are, that's when it's a problem. So in that moment,
like that's your thing.
I celebrated, but then I checked myself and I'm like, is that cool?
Maybe I shouldn't do that.
and I rationalized, like, yes, I've been really angry with this person and blah, blah, blah. But then I have to make a conscious decision about, is this where I want to source my joy on a regular basis? Is this, look, I had my moment, I let it out, but is this where I want my joy to come from? No.
Yeah, no. Right.
And so you just
check yourself
to pay attention to where we are drawing our joy. And if we draw from the languish well, like once a year, okay, we're fine. But if we do it all the time, we're going to get sick. So it's just important for us to recognize
there it is.
When we step into that realm. And, because we're humans, it happens. Somebody does us wrong and we're like, That's why you don't.
Karma. That's what you get.
Exactly.
Came back and bit ya.
Right. So
All
that's the
right.
ethics of joy. That is how
That's
our
so dope.
goals and decisions and stuff is driven by our well-being and how we pursue joy as a result of
Mm-hmm.
our well-being. So.
Mm-hmm. That is so dope. Well, let's transition into A Joyfully Single, because that is your book that you have written. And, well, actually, I'll let you introduce the book and then I'll say my spiel about single and joyfulness, because I know a lot of people are like, well, you married. So what you know about being joyfully single? Oh, I know. I've been single before.
You
But
were married, were you?
exactly. I wasn't born married. But tell us your inspiration behind this book.
Well, the inspiration was absolutely personal. I was divorced in 2010, and I was, a Christian woman going to church. And so I was very much like, you stay focused, you pray, you declare, what it is that you want for your life, and you heal, and then what you want comes. So in 2010, I moved down here to Georgia. I joined a church. And I remember one of the first services I went to, the pastor said, I want you all to come up here and declare what you're believing the Lord for. So I ran up there to the altar. I was like, yeah, I believe the Lord for a house. I believe the Lord for a book. And I believe the Lord for a husband.
Love it. A book, Anna. Okay.
And the funny thing is that it all came in that order. But no, the husband.
Nice. Wait, a house, a book, and a husband?
But
Oh, not the husband yet, but you close.
Spoiler alert. And the book. Okay. And I was like, wait a minute. And so about 3 years in, I'm like, Lord, I've been doing the things. I've been praying. I have a prayer room.
That part.
The war room thing from that movie. I've been, all the things. I mean, and that was 3 years in. About 5 years in, I tried to get into a relationship, and it just was like, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, not that one. But 6 years in, I'm like, starting to get mad. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm a good person. Like, I'm the good catch. What are you doing? Like, why am I keep meeting these people who are like, hey, you want to spend the night on the first date?
Yeah, don't see your worth. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, so I came to a point of just complete anger. Like, what are we doing? This is, I remember one night I was in my house, the house that I had prayed for on the altar.
Got the house. Yay.
And I was all out screaming at God. Like, what are you doing?
We had moments like that.
Me? I'm right. Hello. I was doing all this. I was going in. I get a call from my pastor, who also happens to be, he was on my podcast a few times, and, he showed my book to the congregation. So he's just really supportive. So he calls me in the middle of my screaming, and he says, are you okay?
What?
He says, the Lord told me to call you right now.
What? There go your answer to your prayers right there. The Lord told me to call you. The Lord knew. Or he knew. He listened.
I was like, actually, I'm not okay. And that's weird that you're calling me right now. And
right.
But it was a reminder, like, God sees you. God sees you. He hears you. So just
wait.
Yeah. So a few years later, now we're like year 8 or 9 post-divorce.
Right.
I finally came to a place of peace.
And all this is after you wrote the book?
After I wrote the first book.
Gotcha.
The first book was called Letters to the Brokenhearted, and that was a post-divorce. Gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that. So
makes sense.
Year 8, 9, 10, I was sort of in my sweet spot. I discovered travel. I discovered jumping on a plane. And this was pre having complete financial stability. But I was like, I'll get on that $39.99 Frontier flight and land in Florida.
That's my husband right there.
Above that. So my cousin and I decided, let's do once a month somewhere.
Love it.
So we did that whole year. Once a month, we're going somewhere.
Get on a plane.
It could be that we get in the car and drive and spend a weekend somewhere, or we get on a plane. So that became my way of just really just diving into my life and not worrying about waiting until somebody comes into my life, and nurturing relationships with my girlfriends and building those
Yep.
relationships. And because there's also research that talks about how important that is once you're
Girlfriend
married.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that before you get married, once you get married, it's,
Yeah.
you don't benefit from that, having that tribe
Yeah.
of women as a support
It's
structure.
easier to lose yourself, I would imagine, if you're just
Yeah.
only a wife. Yeah. Not
So
a
I
friend
think,
to someone.
right. So by 2017, so we are talking 7 years out of divorce, I started writing this book, Joyfully Single.
Nice.
And that's because I realized, I just had a moment where I realized how at peace I am with my life. And my daughter said to me, I really love our life. I love that. I love our household, and it just made me realize that, so divorcing didn't break her. Raising her as a single mom, as a lot of people like to assume, didn't create, trauma
Issues or instability.
right. It did quite the opposite, because I didn't stay in a marriage that wasn't working, and that would have
Yeah.
created probably more tension, trauma,
Yeah.
and whatever for her. And it's not that it was abusive or anything like that. It was just a marriage I wasn't supposed to be in, because
Mhm.
I did exactly what I tell people not to do in this book, is I just need to secure a husband. So I secured a husband.
Check a box.
Yep, I was successful. I did it. Secured a husband at 27.
Woohoo.
But it wasn't the right situation at all. And so I sat down and I wrote this book. I actually read the first paragraph to my daughter as I was sitting on the couch writing it. She's like, "Oh, I love it." And so it took me 3 years.
Wow.
Maybe 5. It came out in 2023. So
Nice.
yeah, so I wrote, so the book is essentially a way for people to recognize this is where I am in life. And it's not a book to say how to get somebody, how to get unsingle, or it's really about how do you live in this space while you are
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
So yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, this is just really good because I know for me, like it just seemed like I was single forever because, a lot of people date in high school, a lot of people date in college. I wasn't dating in high school. I had all the crushes, sending out sweetograms, a little bear, sending a little boy, no return. I was a nerd. Nobody liked me in college. I thought I was cute in college, No, just nothing. And I was very spiritual, gospel girl, and all those things. So same thing where I was just like praying, like, come on, God. And I just honestly sort of found a bit of peace because I was just like, I guess God just has a do not touch sign on me. He just wants only the one to find me. And he just said, look, don't touch her. Don't touch her. So that gave me a peace, but then I was fed up in residency. I went through med school fine, didn't even date in my 20s. Then in residency, I was just like, nope, I'm done. I got on all the dating apps. I was like, I'm done waiting. This is frustrating. Of course, that is frustrating. But I just really feel like there were some depressed moments because it was just like, why can't I find that connection? But now that I've been married 6 years, it just feels like, oh, wait, when was there a point without him? So it's just like, and I was doing those things. I was traveling. I went places by myself, met up with women who I knew, met through Black Girls Run, and just like stayed with them in the hotel, and just like, it was just great. So that's the thing, when you continue to live and do the things you want to do, but you feel trapped when you just wait. Like, but I don't want to buy a house until I'm married. I don't want to go travel until I'm married. I don't want to go do that until I'm married.
Right.
That's when it's dreadful.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I talk about is not waiting until you get to these milestones before doing these things. And thank God I didn't wait, because in the meantime, I'm building equity in my home. I'm building my credit. I'm really kind of positioning myself to be somebody that somebody would want to be with, because
Yes.
I'm creating a secure situation for myself, being secure in myself, but also just being secure in the world, so that stuff is really important, to not put it off and think that you can't do it by yourself. Now, there is a lot of stigma for women who do these kinds of things. And I just saw today, I wish I had it up because I'd read it to you, but a gentleman was saying, I'm looking for a wife for one of my friends. And here's the thing she can't have.
Oh.
She can't be one of those women that, travels everywhere because she thinks she's independent. She can't.
Oh, that's whack. That's whack. Well, then he not gonna find nobody.
Things. And it was like, and at the end of that list, he's like, you just go ahead and enjoy being single. I'm looking for a woman for my guy who's, she cooks and she does this and she does that, and so there is a lot of that kind of talk when it comes to women who are single.
To discourage them.
This book was being written during the Kevin Samuels era, where he's, doing all the talk against women. But this book is not just for women. This book is
for sure
specifically addressed for women and men, because a lot of the men that I interviewed writing this book and doing the research are struggling even more than women. And struggling even more than women is because our pain and trauma is being put on display for the world. The relationship experts, they all capitalize on what they think is, women's pain and despair over being single. But the truth is, men are suffering in silence because they don't have a place where they can talk about it. Men aren't talking about, now they are doing
they don't talk about it.
They're doing it more now on podcasts than they were when I was writing. But before that, it was just kind of like, there was no relationship expert talking about men. You're going to be an old dude with cats, so we need to get you.
Nobody talks about that.
We got to get you together, get you.
But we need to talk about it because
right, like we need to make you, whatever for what. So they would suffer in silence, and so some of the men I was talking to would say things like, I hate being single. And in fact, I resent the fact that you're writing a book called Joyfully Single, because there's nothing joyful about it. There's nothing joyful about how I became.
Why not?
And anger, really, and they talked about not having anybody to go to. So all of this negativity towards women traveling, bonding with their girlfriends are actually the thing that is building us up and helping us thrive through this time in our lives.
Yeah.
So it's actually a disservice for men that it's not talked about enough among their circles. Whereas for us, it's
for
just
sure
normal.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really about seeing the pros and cons in each situation, right? I mean, there's pros and cons to being single. There's pros and cons to being a wife. That's why I wrote this book, Wife Mom Boss, because obviously there needed to be a book written of how to deal with being a wife, mom, boss, and avoiding burnout, And of course, we need to avoid burnout as a single person. But like I used to always talk about, like, I have no strings attached, no attachments. I'm unattached. That's what I would say. Because I had no kids, no husband. I could just look at myself and say, okay, what you want to do? Okay, I want to do that. So those are part of the pros. Obviously, there's cons too. Right. And then, sure, whenever you find that person, but it's just that sense of confidence and self-esteem and self-worth that you really have to work on building up if you don't have it. Because if you don't have those things, you're not going to be someone that someone's going to want to talk to, right? So if you sit up here just like, woe is me, I'm never going to meet anybody, I'm ugly, I'm undesirable, you will be undesirable if that's what you think. Or so you really do have to reframe your mind. Or you what?
Target for a predator.
Oh, yes. And we're not blaming the victim, but it's real.
Right. It's real. And it's important for us to recognize, what it takes to protect ourselves, from those kinds of, situations.
Yeah. It goes back to that instant gratification versus, waiting for that true joy. So are you just going to like go out and grab the sex just because you feel that closeness versus I'm just going to thrive while being single instead of like waiting hopelessly or just grabbing the first thing. So,
right. Well, I got so good at single life at just, I thought my cousin and I had resolved that we're just gonna, when we get older, we're gonna get a house together that's joined together. And I was literally like, this is it. I'm happy. Like, that's great.
Yeah. A lot of women get into that. A lot of Black women were thriving, or they're thriving in their businesses and they're bossing it up, bosspreneurs and all that, mompreneur, whatever. And they're just like, hey, fine, this is my life and I love it.
And it's not, I don't want a man or I reject men. It's more so, this is what my life looks like right now. And
you accept it.
my best friend asked me this question that made me sort of just changed the trajectory of the way I thought about my life. And she said, Pam, if you were single for the rest of your life, how would you live it? Would you live it upset and frustrated and worried and afraid? Or would you, what would it look like for you? And that's what changed a lot for me, because it made me realize, what if I am single for the rest of my life? Am I going to be in languishing mode until my life ends? Or, so that's when I started to accept, okay, so my life could look different. It can unfold differently. What does that different look like? And not that I wanted to speak that into existence. I know we talk about that kind of thing a lot, but it was also about changing my mindset so that it wasn't so dependent on this thing has to happen in order for me to find joy in life. And that was so effective. It was such a powerful question.
For sure. And really, the story hasn't ended. I mean, I don't know if you want to share that, if that has to do with how you.
What's interesting is that, because 2010, that was 15 years ago. On the last day of writing this book, before I actually had to submit it, I had a deadline for the editor. And I got a call from a guy that I had met 10 years prior. And 10 years prior, even though I wanted a husband, I got the sense that he wanted a relationship, like he was ready. This man was marriage ready, and I had just gotten divorced, and I was like, can we slow down?
Wow.
Kind of made me back up a little bit. And I told him, like, I don't think I'm ready for what you're ready for. So 10 years passed, and 12 years, I don't know. And we saw each other on Instagram. I guess we were still following each other. And so he sends me a message asking if I can meet him for lunch. I was like, oh, I remember he was a nice guy.
That is so dope.
It was the day that I was working on this book, the last few pages that I needed to submit to the editor. And I told him, I have a deadline tonight. So can we meet in this window of time? And it was like, sure. And so we met in that window of time. But once that window it was like lunch, and we ended up sitting there till 2. And then we didn't really want to leave. And he said, I know you have a deadline. This is, Super Bowl season. So the 49ers are going to be playing. I'm going to go across the street and watch. If you want to come, you could bring your laptop and you could finish your book there. And I was like blown away, because I have met men who were like, obviously your work is more important.
Yeah, like he understood. He didn't know the name of the book though. Like that you writing a book called Joyfully Single.
I don't even think I told him what it was about.
Right, you didn't.
So I bring the laptop to the sports bar and working on it, and got it done, submitted it. And it was like, we were there till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And it ended up being like a good day of a date. And I will say, the way that we met, for those who are a little bougie, it was Applebee's.
Hey.
I have gotten really comfortable sitting in places like coffee shops, lounges, the bar, at places like
be out there
and writing. And so I can't tell you how often people approach me when I'm just sitting there writing. So I was on my laptop. This was 10 years prior to us being reconnected. At Applebee's, he said, what are you doing? What are you writing?
Oh, that's so cool.
That's when I was writing letters to the brokenhearted.
And that's the key. That is the key. You know how they always say, when you get your mind off of something you really want, that's when it's just going to come.
Yeah.
If you just sitting in dread and just waiting, when is it going to go? But then now you just like so satisfied and at peace and with joy in your singlehood, so at peace that you wrote the book on being joyfully single. And
the day I finished the book, that's crazy.
Exactly. The day you finished the book, your man popped up. Because now it's been 3 years that y'all been dating, right?
We're like 2.5 years in. And it's amazing. I can't yet say, oh, we're married or engaged, but this is exactly
happy.
Yeah. I mean, I want a courtship. I am a slow to, let's build, slow to build kind of person. So I love that it's not going too fast. I love that,
you're chilling.
I said, my daughter's I'm about to be an empty nester. So I didn't want to bring a stepdaddy in the senior year of her high school. Like, we're not doing that.
That makes sense. When you have kids, and you got to be strategic. And
maybe,
another thing,
maybe when she was 7, but
right, it's different because you're not going to wait 10 years, but some people do.
Yeah.
But another thing, our criteria, like we have our list, us Black women, we have our list. We want this. I had a nice long list. And you know what was on that list? A man without children. What did I marry? A man with a child. And literally a couple of months before I met him, I had listened to or watched this video about that, like how you need to change your strict criteria. What's on there that you can like cross off because it's just ridiculous because you're so picky, you never gonna meet nobody. So that was one of the things I said, well, let me cross this off because why don't I want to date a man with a child? That makes no sense. Like who's childless at this point anyway? And to be honest, the traits that I fell in love with my husband is because he was a father. So it's like, look back at your list, there's some red flags. I'm not saying, okay, if he's this, go ahead.
I'm anti-list. I don't like lists. Let me tell you, I wish I had it with me. It's in my prayer closet. I still have that prayer closet, by the way. But what I don't have is I don't have a list. What I have is sort of who I would like to be with the person I'm with. So in the presence of this person or with this person, who do I get to be? I get to be somebody who is my full self. I get to be joyful.
Wow.
I get to be creative. I get to be adventurous. Like those are the kinds of things that I wrote. So you could call it a list, but it's not a list of requirements of what he has to be. I also wrote a list of what I would like us to be as a couple. As a couple, we are, I don't know, innovative, or as a couple, we collaborate, and so that for me,
love that
can come in all kinds of packages,
Yeah.
And so I would rather focus on who I want to become in a relationship than
that's good. Because we're like, oh, Mr. Right, but you need to focus on being Miss Right before you even find Mr. Right. And when you make a list of who you want to be, that means you're constantly looking back at that list and constantly changing yourself. But when you're looking at the list of him, you constantly going back to the list. Is that what he is? Okay, so why isn't he that? Okay, honey, so this is what I expected of you. So why aren't you doing those things? So I love that because you're looking inward and being the best you in that relationship. Ooh.
Well, and the other thing is when you're in that relationship, you have a sort of a barometer to say, am I being my full self?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that.
Is that happening in this situation?
Your full self, yeah.
Right. Am I at peace? Am I afraid? Let's do a check on how this thing is resonating with my purpose and what I bring to the world and to this relationship. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is all great things. So like before we leave, like is there a joy practice or something personal that you've done or something that you would recommend that people do, whether they're single or not, to help if they're awaiting something?
Yeah. Well, so I have a couple of different publications. So one of the things I'm going to use as my cheat sheet right here is this book is called The Practice of Joy. So it's the Practice of Joy workbook. And y'all will notice that Dr. Anita and I have the same color schemes.
I love it.
In these colors. But, and then I also have this flip book. It's a joy reflective flip book. And so what I have in here are the 4 practices of joy. So there's different models like this in here that, and what do you call it? Affirmations and so forth. So this is what I recommend for people. And I'll tell you what it says, because I know you can't read that, but it's the 4 practices of joy. And the 4 practices, they all start with an E. It's the experience of joy, the emotion of joy, the ethos of joy, and the expression of joy. Some people think joy is I'm jumping up in the morning, like jumping for joy, like yay. But and I've had one of the guys I talked to was like, that's just not my nature. I'm not built for joy because that's not what I do. And I said, see, this is why this model is so important, because everybody doesn't do joy like that. Yeah. So the experience of joy means that I'm going to be intentional and I'm going to create experiences, or I'm going to savor the experiences as they happen. Then there's the emotion of joy. So that is the crying or
Yeah.
those things that are welling up inside of you, the physiological response, the goosebumps, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the ethos of joy, which a lot of people, well, all of this model is mine, so nobody's talking about the ethos of joy. But what that is our personality and our values and who we are. So our ethos might drive us to engage in service in the community, or might drive us to, I want to cook for my spouse because it gives me joy to do those things. So it is it's sort of your values playing out. In a joyful manner. It's also your character. So it's how your character and your values embody and reflect joy. So for the guy who said, "Oh, just jump for joy," that's not me. Maybe for him, he's more of an ethos guy.
Yeah.
And then the last one is expression, how I outwardly demonstrate. These are the jumping for joy people. So there's not just one way to express joy. And I would even put that your running could fall into the category of ethos because it's part of your values and your character and who you are, but it also can fall into experience. I'm creating this experience every morning, So that's my giveaway or takeaway for you all is figure out or just be honest about who you are as a person and what practice of joy most resonates with who you are.
Yeah.
For some people, it's like, I want to achieve all four of those.
Do all the things. Yeah.
But for others, it's like, no, I want to zero in on the ethos. I'm a lot quieter. I want to meditate. I want to, lean into quiet, peaceful moments. But I want people to know that they can honor their approach to joy and that it doesn't have to look like one thing, because that's what often scares people.
And it might change depending on the day,
or the setting, or So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So where can we find Joyfully Single? Where can we find the workbook, the wheel, all the things?
So my website is drPamelalarde.com. And that is where everything will be found. Like I have an Epic Joy Retreat, and that's in Costa Rica. It's one of the blue zones in the world where people live the longest and have the healthiest lives. So I love Costa Rica. But that is July 22nd to 28th and 24th to 28th. And that is on my website. All my books are on my website. My courses are on my website. So everything's there.
Just go to the website. It's easy. drPamelalarde.com. Yes. Oh, awesome. That sounds really great. Definitely get her books, Joyfully Single. And then when you find yourself married, get my book, Inspire Joy for the Wife, Mom, Boss, because you want to learn how to balance it all without losing yourself. And that's on my website for $17.49. And you can also get your Joy bundle. That includes the Enjoyno along with the Inspire Joy book on my website, DrEnjoyLife.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Larde. You have been amazing. I absolutely love it. I'm going to have you come back. It just makes sense for a joy researcher to just keep coming back on Journey to Joy Live.
Please. Yeah, no, there's so much. I mean, we only scratched the surface. There's so much more.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been an Enjoy Life production. If you're in a crisis, don't hesitate. Call, text, or chat 988 for immediate support. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional treatment. If you're looking for therapy or medication management through Enjoy Life, visit www.drEnjoyLife.com to request a consultation. I'm licensed in 12 states. I accept Aetna in Georgia, Florida, and Virginia. Be sure to grab your copy of the Enjoyno to help you on your wellness journey. Also check out Inspire Joy for the Wife, Mom, Boss to help you balance it all without losing yourself. Better yet, get the full Joy bundle for just $45. Remember, Journey to Joy Live is every Thursday at 7 p.m. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, may you continue to transform stress into joy.